We're off script now. All right. All right, I want to thank you very, 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 very much for coming out here today, here in Plymouth, America's hometown. I'm State Representative Paul Frost. I'm a member of House Republican leadership at the State House. And I'm about an hour and a half or so from here inland. So I'm an inlander. So not as far inland as Ohio, but still we're inlanders. And seeing the ocean is a treat. So I'm very glad that we could come out here to Plymouth and do this today. Can we all just rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance together, please? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the third town hall event Governor Kasich has done in Massachusetts. Good. He's had great crowds in Worcester and in Springfield. And no other Republican candidate has come here to do 3 town hall meetings. And I hope that you remember that when you vote tomorrow. I also want you to remember something else, because you're getting robocalls today. I already got a couple of them. You might even get one from me today. I don't know. But you get a lot of robocalls today saying that there's one candidate in particular that can beat Hillary Clinton. And that candidate is wrong, because poll after poll after poll has shown clearly there is one Republican candidate that can beat Hillary Clinton and does so by very big margins, and that is Governor John Kasich. There's one other caveat that we got to remember when we vote tomorrow. The road to the White House for a Republican candidate goes through Ohio. We need to have someone who can win Ohio, and Governor John Kasich has done it twice. Governor John Kasich, we all have seen him in the debates. Everybody watched the debate last Thursday? Yeah. At one point, I was watching that debate between Trump, Rubio, and Cruz, and I honestly thought I was watching a reenactment of a Three Stooges routine. But Governor John Kasich didn't jump in. He didn't get into the fray of name-calling and mudslinging and everything else. He just answered the questions. He answered them with intelligence. He answered them with specifics. And he answered them through his heart. Never once did he try to get into pointing fingers or calling other people names. That's the kind of leadership we need in Washington, D.C. today. And you need to get him elected. We need to get him elected. And we need to start with that tomorrow. We all know, just like our own Governor Charlie Baker here in Massachusetts, the reformer Governor John Kasich is, taking on tough problems in Ohio. He turned huge, and I am quoting a certain candidate, huge deficits and made them very huge surpluses. He created over 400,000 new jobs in Ohio. And when he was in Congress, he was the architect of the very last time that our federal budget was ever balanced, that it ever showed a surplus, and that the debt went down. And that was Governor John Kasich, and I think we need more of that in Washington today. We need that leadership. But you have to vote tomorrow. You got to get your friends out to vote tomorrow, your friends and your family. That's the only way we're going to do it. Massachusetts needs to send a message to the rest of our Republican Party that we're serious, that we want our candidate to know what he's talking about, and we want our candidate to be able to win in November, and that is Governor John Kasich. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the First Lady of Ohio, and with your support and your help tomorrow, the First Lady of the United States of America, Karen Kasich.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. I've got to say I'm thrilled to be back in Massachusetts. It's a little bit like coming home for me. My parents were both from Newton, Massachusetts, and we spent summers coming back to the Cape, and I bring my daughters, Emma and Reese, back to the Cape every summer now, as a mom myself. And I would also like to say that I have two cousins in the audience today, my cousin Steve from Braintree and my cousin Carol from Wellfleet and her husband Dave. So it feels good to be here. One question I get asked an awful lot is, how did you meet the governor? How did you get roped into this life of politics? Because I didn't choose this life of politics, but he did. It's like to say that I was a young woman right out of college, and I was working at for Ohio State, putting together a magazine, and they asked me to go and take pictures of officials in the state of Ohio. So I had about 7 officials that I needed to take a photographer around to and get some pictures. So I went to Congressman John Kasich's office. He didn't mean any more to me than any of the other officials on the piece of paper, but I do remember that we laughed and smiled and kind of had a good time during the photo shoot. Went back to my office, and a couple of months later, my phone rang, and it was Congressman Kasich who called to tell me that he thought the magazine turned out really nicely. And I thought, well, that was nice. None of those other men called to tell me that the magazine came out nicely. I was kind of oblivious. And about a month later, he called again, and this time he asked me out to lunch. And I just, I'm just out of college, and I wasn't, really aware of too much in the political world, but I called my mother and I said, this congressman just asked me out to lunch, Mom. And she said, oh no. She said, you pay no attention to current affairs. You don't know anything that's going on. What are you going to talk about? Go get Newsweek magazine and start reading. So to the day she died, she sent me Newsweek magazine for Christmas. But the conversation must have gone all right, because here we are after 19 years of marriage with 2 wonderful 16-year-old twins, Emma and Reese, and we're still laughing and smiling every day. So I think that things went well. And I couldn't be prouder of the man that I have watched grow over the last 25 years. From his time in Congress, as Paul mentioned, when he was Budget Committee Chairman and balanced the budget for the first time and last time since man walked on the moon. When he was in Congress for those 18 years serving on the Armed Services Committee, I watched as he detected waste, fraud, and abuse, worked to change it, worked to ensure that the weapons we had available to our men and women in uniform were the weapons they needed at the right place and the right time. And I was so proud of those efforts that he made. And then he retired and went into the private sector, and I really liked that. That was nice. He worked on Wall Street. He worked with CEOs. He spent a lot of time helping people create jobs and learned a lot about what the economy has to do with why companies decide to add jobs or not. And that was all wonderful until he looked at me and said, Ohio's in a death spiral, and I think I'm the one that can fix it. And I thought, oh, here we go again. So John ran for governor, defeated an incumbent. I think for the first time in like 36 years that an incumbent was defeated as governor in the state of Ohio. And as Paul mentioned, turned the economy around. He balanced the budget, They've created more than 400,000 private sector jobs since he's been governor. And he sees this economic growth as a means to lift all people, not just those that typically get lifted, but those who, as John says, live in the shadows. The drug addicted, the developmentally disabled, the working poor. He's put policies in place to ensure that those people are lifted along with the rest. So I am quite proud of his efforts. I support his run for president. I believe that he is a uniter, not a divider, and I think the country has had enough dividing and needs a man with a vision of a united, strong America going forward. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here to hear my husband, Ohio's Governor John Kasich, and I will appreciate your vote tomorrow.
Thank you all. I'm so glad you're all here because this is really something to see. And I wanted my family to see what it is like here when I'm out on the road. And I want to tell you, I can't believe we're in Plymouth, okay? I've been looking for pilgrims since I got out of the car. And we saw one guy, and my wife said he wasn't a pilgrim, he was a wash-ashore. You know what that is? And I'm looking at you, and I'm wondering, what time is it, by the way? What is the time? 4 o'clock. Why are yes, okay, Skipper. Why are all these people here? Okay, that's the first thing, but why? You know, listen, folks, my father was a mailman. He carried mail on his back. He delivered the mail to our home, and my wife said, stop saying that your dad stuck his nose into everybody's business. But my father knew everything about everybody on his mail route, and he would celebrate with the families if their kid scored a touchdown or the daughter sang a solo. My dad was there with them. And when they lost somebody or something, he'd cry with them. He was an incredible guy. My his father was a coal miner. He died of black lung, losing his eyesight as he got older. And the real interesting story about my grandfather is when he would go down into the mine, he would dig. I guess it was just unbelievably hard. And when he would come up, he felt he was going to get a good day's pay, and they would say, I'm sorry, but you brought too much peat and not enough coal. And they basically gave him about half of what he thought he was going to get. You know, total ripoff. And my grandfather had no control over what was happening in his life, and people could take advantage of him because he had immigrated here and came as a little boy, and that's the way we understand it. We didn't even, for a while, weren't even sure if his name was really Kasich or if he had taken on the name of the family who he had traveled with. My mother's mother could barely speak English. My mother she was a remarkable woman. She was extremely intelligent and very, very articulate, and she could cut you with her incisiveness. And I've been telling people on the road, she was a talk show pioneer. When somebody would say something on the radio, she would yell at the radio to correct them. And then she really got into the whole talk show radio business. And one day she was listening to the radio and got very, very excited about this heated debate that was going on the radio. And we had 2 phones in our house. We had one in the kitchen, and we had one in the up in their bedroom. And my mother got excited about this debate, and she went all over the house looking for me. And the last place, of course, she would look would be in her bedroom, and she came into the bedroom, and I was the person on the phone. So I guess that's called a foreshadow. The town where I grew up, people found themselves out of work. You know, and today there are a lot of Americans are fed up. They're not sure that their jobs are secure. They haven't had a decent wage increase in an awful long time. All their bills are going up except their own pay. And then they've got a son or a daughter living up in the attic who has big college debts, and either can't find a job or has a job that underpays. And then they think about, they go to the grocery store and they scrape and buy, and they see somebody, you know, who's on relief, and they say, you know, that person's buying better than I am. And then they think, well, somebody's coming in across the border, and that's why my wages aren't good. And the senior citizens are saying, you know, they're going to steal my Social Security. And the young people are saying, I got a better chance of seeing a UFO than a Social Security check. And then people are frustrated with the way things are. And maybe the time has come to just throw everybody out and start all over again, okay? And I get that, and I understand that. Do you realize that if we do that, we are not going to solve our problems? I mean, as frustrating as it gets, you know, I don't know if you've ever, when you were kids, you played chess with your brother or you played checkers with your sister, and you get really angry, and you would think, and you just knock all the pieces off the chessboard or knock all the pieces off the checkerboard, and guess what? The game's over. The game is over. Did you accomplish anything? Oh, maybe for a second you kind of felt good about what you did, but the game was never completed. Folks, we can't have the status quo. But I think what we're lacking in this country today is vision, toughness, strength, and leaders who are willing to put their own political hides at risk for the good of the people that they serve. Now, I actually was there when that happened. I don't care what party you're in. If you're Democrats, I want you to cross over tomorrow and vote for me, okay? So I don't care what your party is. I'm just going to tell you a story. I labored for 10 years against a Republican president for a large part of it to try to get our budget balanced. Why do I want to balance it? Well, first of all, if the budget's not balanced, people who create jobs are going to sit on their wallets because they think that at some point this debt is going to come and whack them in the head, and they're just not going to invest and get caught in a bind. And then the debt that gets rung up, our kids have to pay. So there are a couple of reasons why you do it. I'll tell you one story. I was offering budgets against a Republican President Bush, and Dan Quayle, remember him? He called me in one day, or he called me one day. He said, the president's really mad at you because he read quotes in the newspaper about his budget. He's really mad, very angry. He said, I know you were misquoted. I said, well, you know, actually I wasn't. And but I hung up the phone, and I told him if you wanted to discuss more, we'll talk after business. And I never did hear from him. But I called Karen, and I said, the president's really mad at me. He's really mad at me. I mean, how do I get myself into this? And a couple hours later, I got flowers delivered to my desk with a note that says, the president may be mad at you, but I'm mad about you. That's when I knew I had to marry her. But I'm plugging along, and I'm getting my brains beat out in this because I was stepping on everybody's toes. Then I started to make a little bit more progress. And then we had an election in November of 1994, and we elected a whole bunch of people that came to Washington saying that they were committed to change. And we just had, you know, we're looking now at this great basketball player, Steph Curry, and we're saying, my goodness, we've never seen anything like this, what he's doing. Well, you had the Patriots, and we saw for many years, wow, look what they're doing. They can just win. And the determination of winners came to Washington. And they said, these are the things we are going to do, and we do not care if we ever get elected again. And it was a magic time. Newt was the speaker before, you know, things went downhill. We had a great team on the front line. I was budget chairman. And during that period of time, I watched politicians not give one single hoot about politics. It does not happen very often. I think we had a chance after 9/11 to have the same thing happen, and I think the opportunity was lost. You know, there's a saying in politics, never let never let an opportunity when things are in trouble go past, because there's an opportunity when things are bad to be able to strike a lot of things that are good whenever there's a moment of chaos. And we blew it back then after 9/11. I think the country was very united and many things could have been done. But I was there in the 90s when we did it. And we got to a balanced budget. We paid down $500 billion of the national debt. We cut the capital gains tax. And let me remind you, as we moved into this century, which was not that long ago, jobs were up, wages were up, families were stronger, people were more optimistic, all because the economy was growing. And I've come to learn over the course of my lifetime that there's only three things that matter that a politician needs to focus on. Their only moral purpose. Three things. Jobs. What do you think the second one is? Jobs. And what do you think the third one is? Jobs. Because when there are jobs, our families are stronger, our kids are more secure, our neighborhoods are better. And that's what we needed to focus on. But you know, to balance a budget, you step on everybody's toes. You're a farmer, you're a teacher, you're a student, you're a senior, you're in the military, you're a scientist. It affects everybody. And if you sit around and put your finger in the air, not just on that issue, but on any issue, and you are afraid to lead, you know what I say? Then go get the hell out of that place and go home, okay? Get out. So, and then I went to Ohio, and Paul mentioned a lot of it. Look, we're up over 400,000 jobs. Our credit is strong. We're running a surplus. And if you're mentally ill, drug addicted, the working poor, we're devoting resources to you. If you're developmentally disabled, we want to integrate you. And if you're a member of the minority community, then we want you to believe that the country works for you and the state of Ohio works for you as well. We know what it takes. We know what the formulas are to get us going again. But I am saying to you, if the people of this country, and I'm just like Paul Revere, here I'm in Massachusetts, I'll be like Paul Revere. If we knock all the pieces off the chessboard, if we engage in nothing but negativity and don't focus on getting the leadership, improving the leadership in that town, we're going to drift. And we're not going to be satisfied with where we're going to be drifting to. It's just not going to happen, folks. Now, you can't have some weak-kneed person going in there and trying to fix that stuff. That will not work. You have to have somebody that's got the guts, the tenacity, and the experience to get this done, because these kids, even though they don't know it, they're counting on it. And there is no time to be playing a political game with the powerful or the rich or the connected in Washington. Who gives a hoot? We go there to try to help you. We don't go there to try to suck up to them so that they can be in a position of calling the shots, okay? I hope that's why you're here today, because I'm going to tell you, when I'm elected President of the United States, there will be nobody calling the shots. Those shots will be called by you and not by a bunch of people in a faraway town. Now, a couple other things that I think needs to be said. What are we watching? You know, we kind of laugh about it, but we're not electing class president or class clown. We're picking the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. And I want to tell you, folks, there are people that say you ought to get in there and you ought to start hammering all these people. I will tell you, I would rather lose than degrade myself and call people names. You know, kids are watching this, and they want to believe that their leaders, you know, of all places in Plymouth, where we learned about the history of people who had courage, the history of people who were willing to die for what they believed in. I mean, is there a place that has more history, more people who had conscience and courage and guts and willing to sacrifice for the next generation than right here? I don't think there is. There's not a place where it matters even more. So what I would say is, let's get through this process. Let's keep the faith that at the end of the day, a vision, a positive message, and a reality of change and reform can really carry the day. I think it can. I believe at the end it will, or I wouldn't be standing here in this great hall, in this great building with all of you here. I would just tell you this before we take questions. I'll do my level best. You see, because when I look into your eyes, I may not be perfect, sir, but I'm going to do my best not to disappoint you. Okay? Thank you. Let's take some questions. Okay, who wants to go first? Because we want to take some questions. Right here, sir. Yes.
Governor, first of all, I want to welcome you back to Massachusetts again.
Great.
Pleasure to meet you. There are a lot of us who are very happy that you've taken the high ground in this battle, and we hope that you continue that battle. It's a lot more mature than what's going on. We agree with you 100%. I'm a retired firefighter here in the state of Massachusetts. I recently donated to your campaign. After I donated to your campaign, I got thinking I better find out if my conscience is correct in what I think about you. So I called some relatives in Ohio, and I asked them what they thought of you. It was good.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
So being a firefighter, I wanted to know what your plan is to support the firefighters, the police officers, and the teachers, the unions in the country, but especially fire and police, because we're the first line of defense when it comes to terrorism and that type of thing, domesticated. So what is your plan on that?
Well, I mean, look, first of all, we all know why firemen wear red suspenders, right? Keep their pants up. I mean, come on. He's never heard that before. Listen, I think, look, I've had squabbles with police and fire in Ohio. I tried to change some of the rules to get people to give more to support their own pensions and their health care. Frankly, I think that it was a bridge too far, and I got hammered, okay? I got hammered. And, I'm a big player. I like to shoot the three, okay? I'm not a guy that says, let's wait till tomorrow, let's go and shoot the three. But, sometimes when you lose, you learn as much as when you win. Frankly, I think probably when you lose, you get more than what you win, the lessons that you learn. And I would tell you that, look, everybody loves the police and the fire. You're the ones that are on the highway when we see a terrible car crash, and we hold our breath. I know I do, because my mother and father were killed in a car crash, and so I could just imagine the kind of things that you see on the road. I have highway patrol that travel with me as governor, and the things that they tell me about what they see and the doorbells they have to ring with the saddest news in the world. Or the firemen that are willing to rush into some place. And, I think about 9/11. I went to Ground Zero very shortly after the attack at 9/11. I had a television show at Fox, and it was a show called Heroes. And I went to try to profile the first responders. And the things that they did, running up a building that's on fire rather than running out. So, sir, I think everybody in this room salutes you. And we need to make sure that at no time, either our veterans, our police, our fire, our first responders must be honored in this country. And I honor you for your service and for your work. So thank you for being here. And by the way, if you ever go to the new World Trade Center building, the Freedom Tower, they have a film. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but they have a film in there, a short film, and when you see that film, you'll always realize what these first responders have meant to us as a nation. There was another hand. Yes, sir, right here. And then we'll go into the crowd here, maybe even take a couple back there.
Thank you, Governor. I work with veterans. 22 veterans a day are dying by suicide. What's your plan? How do we end it?
Well, I would tell you that, I mean, number one, when his combat veteran returns to America, they should be able to get health care anywhere they want and whenever they want it, period, end of story, okay? And, you know, and why does it happen? It happens, why do we see this? Because they get so frustrated that they can't get their calls returned. The organization itself has to be completely redone. And we need to put somebody in charge of the Veterans Administration who has credibility with the American people. And there's no question in my mind the VA needs to be decentralized. It needs to be broken into smaller parts. And let me tell you, I know the man who's running the VA. He is a West Point graduate, and he loves America as much as anybody. But I think what happens in that job is they go in to change the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy, I don't want to say changes him, but has defeated him in many ways. And so it's clear to me that we need a wholesale change. Secondly, when a veteran is coming home, I believe that we should have the information that that veteran's returning to America, and that we need to connect them with the Veteran Service Organization and the job creators, not the job creators, but the people who watch the jobs in a state, and we need to connect the veteran with the job. Because everybody wants to hire a veteran. Why? Drug-free, leadership, flexible, strong, but we don't always do that. The bureaucracy of the Pentagon doesn't get the information to the states. Now, we're trying to do this in Ohio. I don't know how many other states are doing it. I would do it nationally. That the veteran and their family needs to know that when that veteran is home, there will be a job opening for them. And here's the reason. There are many job openings in this state not filled. There are, I just saw the other day, I think there's 186,000 job openings in Ohio. Lots of job openings, no one to fill it. The veterans, they would hire a veteran in a second, and we need to connect them. Thirdly, when a veteran comes home, let's say that they're in Afghanistan and they drive a truck from Kabul to anywhere in Afghanistan, to Kandahar, okay, wherever, doesn't matter, that when they come home to Ohio, they want to get a CDL to drive a truck from Columbus to Cleveland. We don't make them make any test. We give them their license. They're already qualified. They served in the military, and we're not screwing around. Here it is. You do what you want. If you're EMT, you go to work in the fire department. We're going to give you tests. You were an EMT in the military, and we're going to put you through some rigmarole. Forget it. And we're also saying that if you have skills, we're going to give you credit in college and credit in the community college that accrues to your benefit, all of this for free. That's the least we should do for our veterans, and I will tell you this. Let me tell you, sir, there should never be a homeless or unemployed combat veteran in the United States of America. It just shouldn't be. Now, here's what happens in politics. So I say all that, right? And then all of a sudden I have 25 people telling me why we can't do it. You know what the key is in politics? You put a plan together and you carry it out. And everybody's squawking and everybody's complaining, and this group jumps up and that group jumps up and they try to block you. You know, at the end, you don't let anybody block you. You just go do it, and you get it done. And I'll tell you an interesting story. When I became governor, the state was a disaster. And I had a meeting. I was invited to speak to all the lobbyists, all the special interest groups in Ohio. So I showed up. I said, folks, I just got elected governor, as you know, and this state's in big trouble. We've lost 350,000 jobs. Our operating budget is 20% in the hole, and I'm going to need your cooperation because big changes are coming to Ohio. And we knew exactly what we wanted to do. We weren't going to raise taxes. We were going to cut taxes. People said, well, that's just crazy. You can't do it. I said, well, just watch. And so they were all in the room, and I said, I want to give you a little bit of advice. I'm going to give you a little sketch out a little bit of what I need. I'm going to be driving a bus, and I expect you to get on the bus. Because if you don't get on the bus, I'm going to run over you with my bus. Do you got it? And this created so much consternation in the state, they thought I was talking to the people. But I was talking to the special interests, because they are the very ones that block you, because they are preservers of the status quo. We can't have the status quo in America any longer. Just shake it up. Okay, how about somebody on this side? Way in the back, ma'am. Right here, this lady right here. Sir, do not fall out that window or we'll never forgive ourselves, okay? And that would be a real pain, wouldn't it, wife? Huh? All right, it's not working with the jokes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Governor, I've heard you make the statement with respect to marriage equality that the court has spoken and you respect that. So in looking at Citizens United and the issues raised by that decision, how do you tackle that, and what do you say to issues of campaign
Well, I
finance?
don't like the idea that billionaires pick who's going to be president of the United States. I think we need an overhaul of our whole campaign finance system, okay? And you know, what I really would like is if we could figure out how we could limit the amount and just force the ability to attract a whole lot of smaller contributions. I don't know what the limit ought to be, but I will tell you that in my sense, you've got to have a reasonable plan that when we put it in, we don't turn around a year later and say that's a lousy plan, because that's what happened on these other campaign finance reform. It wouldn't be my number one issue. My number one issue is this issue of jobs. And to that end, I would have a plan to freeze all federal regulations for 1 year, except for health and safety, force the Congress to vote on anything over $100 million. I would have the vice president, he or she, would be unwinding all these rules that are crippling small businesses' ability to create jobs. I would lower the corporate tax rate to 25% and not double tax corporations, so they bring their money home from Europe and they invest in America rather than in Europe. I'd allow them to write off the cost of investment in plant and equipment in a single year, so they will invest, so we'll have tools to have wage growth. I would reduce the personal tax at 28, 25, and 10% with a 15% capital gains rate, a simplified tax system, and I would have a plan that would get us fiscal responsibility, and we would shift welfare, education, Medicaid, transportation, and job training back to the states. And then I would have to fly around and meet with all of our friends in Europe so they know we have their back. We will have a plan to fix Social Security, another plan to fix the border and get people on a path to legalization and get this behind us once and for all. And that I would do all within the first 100 days. Okay? But I would tell you that this issue, frankly, what should be eliminated in every state in America is the issue of gerrymandering. Because what happens is people run and they get in safe districts and they're worried on the extremes. So they move to the extremes, and that's a very bad thing. But at the end of the day, what works in this country is when you have leaders, not just in our country, but in any of the country, any countries around the world. You know, when Margaret Thatcher was the last man standing in Europe, she did an incredible job of leading. I mean, we're all struck by Winston Churchill. You know, never, 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 never give in. Reagan said that the sun was going to come up, and it did. And many people who were Democrats voted for him on the hope that he could bring America back in the morning and not be into the sunset. I mean, leaders can do this, because if you make laws to try to get people to do what they're supposed to do, you're going to always fall short. No, we need laws. We need reasonable proposals to get these things working. But at the end, it's leadership. It's not rules and it's not laws. It's leadership. And leadership gets people to perform at a higher level. Now, I was talking about the Patriots earlier. I think Bill Belichick could get 11 of us here and get us to go to the Super Bowl. It's just the kind of way it works. And that's what leadership does. Thank you. All right, right here, sir, right here. Here, let me give you a microphone. Is anybody working the microphones? If they are, you're going to lose your high pay. What are you getting paid? Did you get a bottle of water out of this? Yeah, a volunteer. Okay.
Mine is not really a question, it's just a statement. I'm 72 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. It makes
Get that microphone up so people can hear you, sir.
It makes you stop and think about my children, my grandchildren, and I don't need a hug, but I need you to win, because I think there's nobody better in this country to lead us.
How about a hug? Come on, how about a hug? All right, come on. How about a hug? There we go. God bless you. Don't give up that fight. You're going to be okay. You know that. You know, the greatest thing about this campaign is it's changed my life. And you might say, how? I have learned to slow down and to listen to people. You know, in this fast-paced world, we move so fast. I go back to my dad, who knew everything going on in the neighborhood and was there to help. And I want to just tell you something about this, I think, the spirit of this country. We're back to the Pilgrims for a second. You know, the Pilgrims didn't, call anywhere to find out what to do. When I was a kid, our hero was Roberto Clemente. He was a baseball player, and he was a great one, and we admired him so much. And here, right, it's Bobby Orr, or I'll give you another one that I loved, by Larry Bird. But here's one, John Havlicek. Is that what you thought I was going to say? Because he was Mr. Hustle. And when I look at Boston, or I look at Plymouth, or I look at Massachusetts, you know what I see? I see community, family. You see, folks, we can elect a leader at the high level, a president, but you don't think the president's going to come riding in here on some big horse to solve all the problems. You got a problem with drugs here, okay? Who do you think's going to solve that? No, you're going to solve it if you want to. If you really want to solve this problem and you really want to dig in, you will not let these kids turn to drugs. You will have some you will lose, but most of the time you will win. When kids understand that they have a purpose in life, a God-given purpose in life, and if they do drugs and they handicap themselves, they cannot live their life. They cannot carry out their purpose. We need to be in the schools, and we need to be in the boys and the girls club, and the YMCA, and in the churches, and in the synagogues, and we got to beat the curse of drugs. And I'll give you the money, but that's not what's going to do it at the end. It's people deciding we've had enough of this curse. You want to know about income inequality? Give your kids the skills they need to compete in this century. And that's at the school board level. Nothing's holding you back from taking on the problems of the schools. You want to talk about the problem of welfare? Get the businesses in the welfare office and tell the people to get relief, you're going to get trained for one of these jobs. And we're going to hold you accountable. Because my mother was right. It's a sin not to help somebody who needs help, but we can't keep helping people who need to learn how to help themselves. We have to impose some personal responsibility. And one more thing. Well, it's a couple more things. It's the nurse. I'll tell you what it is. If you're a family, it's the nurse. Right, sweetie? When your mother was sick, it's the nurse. It's really not the doctor. It's the nurse that comes in and settles the family down. And it's the doctor, Dr. Dave here, emergency room doctor. You call people when you're so dead tired, you don't go to bed. You make one more phone call. Or it's the teacher that gave up an awful lot of money to try to change somebody's life. And I happen to have a belief that these things get recorded in the book of life. There is a book of life. Our lives are recorded. Now, I want to tell you one last one. This is the woman who was married for 52 years to her husband. He died. You call her on Monday and you say, this Saturday, we're going out to dinner. My husband and I are going to take you out to dinner. Thursday, she goes to the hairdresser. Saturday, she puts on a dress that she hadn't worn in 6 months. Did that change life? Did that change the world, kid? It does. And that's our job. So the spirit of our country rests where we are, not in some, I mean, look, I'll take care of all these other things. You take care of the spirit in Plymouth. I'll come back. We'll have a meeting right in this hall, and we'll celebrate the rebirth of the spirit of the United States of America, okay? Right there, man. Right you.
I'm a teacher, and I have for a long time been on the fence about the Common Core, and I'm wondering if you become president, what your thoughts on the Common Core
Well, I want to
would be.
ship all the federal education programs back to the state. There's 104. I want to put them in. But Massachusetts, there's a guy who's here. I don't know where he is. I don't know where he lives. I think he's still here. His name is David Driscoll. You know that name? That's your boss? Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's a guy that said we're not going to tolerate low standards for our kids. And it shook everybody up. Am I right? And people were like, instead of getting A's, they were getting C's. And boy, I'll tell you what, as much as we love Plymouth, we really, really want to live in Lake Wobegon, where everyone's handsome, everyone's pretty, everybody's A, everybody's going to be an astronaut or a doctor or a billionaire. But we don't live in Lake Wobegon. We live in Plymouth, and we live in Massachusetts, and we live in Ohio. And Driscoll, he took the school whole system on, and he raised the standards in this state and became an inspiration for me as governor of Ohio. So look, I don't know about all this Common Core and what it says on the internet. Here's what it is to me, and this is what we do in Ohio. This is what we ought to do across the country. High standards, local control. The school board is where it happens. Now let me just say a couple things. And I think you probably have most of this done. You need a third grade reading guarantee. You cannot be socially promote kids who can't read, because that's the first reason why they drop out of school. Number two, we need to have mentoring programs in all of our schools, and we need to mentor the kids who are poor, and we need to mentor the kids who are middle and the kids who are rich. When I was a boy, these two barbers, they would come out of their barber shop when I'd walk by, and they'd yell, "Johnny, someday you're going to be something." I remember it like it was yesterday. And the fact is, telling kids what they can do and what they can be, it changes lives. And we need to do it in all of our schools with all of our kids. You have nothing you're doing, you're retired or whatever, and you don't know what to do with yourself, call the school and go in and mentor. Hopefully they'll say you can come in, okay? Maybe they will tell you that. Now, I think the other thing is we need to start teaching kids at a very early age about occupations. What does a fireman do? What does a policeman do? What does a teacher do? What does a scientist do? Because we need to start getting them to think about what they might do. And then we need to feed that as they get older and older and older and give them a real-world experience. My daughter loves fashion. I want her to be able to go 2 or 3 or 4 hours a week right into working with somebody who's in fashion. You know, we have the Limited out in Columbus, you know. Let her go out there and see what it's like. Then she's going to understand why reading, writing, and arithmetic and computing matters. And if you think we're going to have somebody drop out, then we ought to be in a position of where we have to create a separate curriculum. Every kid's got to get a diploma. They don't have to go to college, but we can't let them quit. You know what happens when they quit. And then, you know, I think on top of it, bring vocational education down to the 7th grade. Everybody doesn't have to go to college. In fact, most plumbers make more than most lawyers. I mean, that's a great thing in this country. So, and I want to tell you, teachers feel very underappreciated. This is how crazy the campaign is. I was up in New Hampshire, and I made the statement, if I were king, I would close down all the teachers' lounges. And all the teachers went crazy. You know what I meant by that? Sometimes the teachers will gather, and they will hear these things about the public doesn't like them, they're going to lose their jobs, we're going to take their benefits, and all this other stuff. The teachers, what's more important in our society than the teacher? And frankly, all of us remember those teachers who changed our lives. So we honor you for your work as a teacher, and keep it going. Keep it going. All right, Chris, you're going to pick the last two. Okay, I know I got to go all over the place, and come on, Chris, you pick the last two. Who are you going to? The young guy in front. All right. There's two young guys. All right, then we're going to probably have to get three, because we're going to.
Where do you stand on the protection of religious liberty?
No, what? Religious liberty. Here's what I feel about religious liberty, because this came up in the last debate. I think that churches in these religious institutions ought to be inviolate. Nobody should tell them what to do, because they're a religious institution, and you shouldn't impose things on them that they don't support. I'm, in fact, involved right now for a couple years, and a friend of mine is starting a church, and we're now up to 70, maybe 70 members, and so my faith is important to me. But, you know, I've also said that if you're a cupcake maker, make a cupcake. If that's what you do in your life, and somebody said, well, you know, there's all these lawsuits and everything going on. Look, if you want somebody to do something that they don't feel good about, then have a little common sense. Don't go and haul them into court. That's not the way we live in this society. You know, if somebody doesn't want to be a photographer at your wedding, find another photographer, okay? Don't be suing the photographer. I mean, what are we just suing each other? Oh, common sense. Now, I got to tell you, if this gets out of control, well, if it does get out of control, because in my state it is not. We don't even hear about this. If it gets out of control, then we're going to have to figure it out, and we're going to have to pass some law with constitutional lawyers and all this other stuff, and that's what we'll have to do. But in the meantime, until I see that it rises to a point where people just can't respect people's conscience, but it doesn't happen in my state. Maybe it's happening in Massachusetts. I don't know how many times, but I don't believe you just pass a law because there's 3 or 4 or 5 things that happen. We don't need any more laws, but if we have to have one, we'll have one, okay? Who else? Right here?
Thank you. My question to you, Mr. Kasich, is what are your opinions on rebuilding the military?
Okay. How old are you, kiddo?
I am 14.
14. Okay. How about that, huh? One time when I was reminded of this, I don't know, I was 16 or 17, maybe I was just a senior in high school. We'd had a race ride in our high school. And I didn't even remember all this till this reporter digging into my life told me he went out to my old hometown. And I did know that at a school board meeting, I stood up and kind of lectured everybody in my town. And I remember my father came home. I didn't think too much of it. I got up and yelled at everybody in the town for we weren't solving problems, and I went home, went to bed, didn't think about it. My dad came home the next day. He says, Johnny, come in here. I said, yeah, what's up, Dad? He said, what did you do last night? It's all over town. What did you do? I said, I just made a little talk, Dad. So when I see a 14-year-old stand with a microphone and speak, that's a good thing, isn't it, folks? It's a really good thing. Perfect. Chris, perfect one to finish on, because I want to say a couple things about the military and about our country. First of all, the military has really run down, and we're going to need to spend more money. But let me also tell you that the Pentagon itself is a place where they waste lots of money, okay? And there are 800,000 people inside the Department of Defense performing bureaucratic functions. 800,000 people. Never heard that before, did you? I was one of the guys that found the hammers and the screwdrivers that cost tens of thousands of dollars. And I fought with every defense contractor in the United States. I limited the production of the B-2 bomber, which was had a mission to fly inside the Soviet Union in the middle of a nuclear war and drop more nuclear weapons. I'm like, how many do you have to drop in one day to have a bad day? And we limited the production of that. But the military needs to be seriously to be rebuilt. And it needs to be rebuilt while making sure we also reform the way in which they spend money so the money gets to the people on the front line. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the world very quickly. So we face this group, ISIS. ISIS is a cult of death. Women are nothing but objects. Women are to be degraded in the minds of the people who operate under ISIS. Young ladies, are you aware of this? I mean, it is a horrific, evil philosophy. And you can't negotiate with them. You can't like sit down and say, well, let's try to work this out. They have to be destroyed. And they will get destroyed if I'm there with a combination of Western forces, Europe, America, and also with the Muslim countries, the Arabs who are at risk today. And who might they be? Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the Gulf states, they're all at risk, and they all know it. So we have an opportunity to unite people to accomplish this mission if we have the determination to do it. Now, once we destroy them and things settle, we come home. I don't believe in being policemen of the world. I don't believe in nation building. I don't believe in converting people to vote the way we vote. Just take care of things, settle it down, and then come on back home. Now, let me talk about a couple countries. Russia. Vladimir Putin needs to understand that we're going to arm the Ukrainians. They want to fight for their freedom. We're going to give them the weapons to fight for their freedom, okay? And we're going to tell Putin that if, in fact, you want to invade a NATO country, or even Finland or Sweden, where we have made a pledge that an attack on one is an attack on us, he needs to understand. If you attack them, you're attacking us, and we will not sit back. We will engage you. Now, we don't need to threaten him, and we don't need to rattle sabers. We just need to make it clear to him what we're willing to put up with and what we are not willing to put up with. The same goes with the Chinese. They're hacking into our systems, and they must stop, because we will defend ourselves and we will counterattack. They do not own the South China Sea, and no matter how much they build islands out there, which is what they're doing, they're not going to take it over, and we will unite our friends in Asia to tell them to knock it off. And we don't need to threaten them either. They're a competitor, but they don't have to be an enemy, but we have to be firm with them. And if the United States is not policemen of the world, if we don't have to rattle sabers, we don't have to be in a position of where we threaten war with somebody, just say what we mean and mean what we say. And if we do that, the countries around the world will have more confidence in us. And right now, they lack it. And when people lack confidence in the United States, our friends don't know what to think, and our enemies become more adventurous. And that is not acceptable. And concluding is this. These young people that are here are going to go to college. And inevitably, they're going to have some professor that talk about all the wrongs that the United States has done. It's inevitable that they go there. We all heard it. And then we went home and talked to our parents at Thanksgiving, and we know what happened when we got home, okay? And I just want to say to you folks, I love our country because we stand for human rights, equality of women, respect for science and civilization, the fact that everyone should have an opportunity to rise. And while at times we have to engage in military action, we're fundamentally a country of peace and a country of hope. And we need to rise again, because when we don't, the world finds itself in a really bad place, and we're seeing it today. And with a little bit of assertiveness and an ability to lead, the world will be better. And let me also say, as the world is better, of course, it means that we're more proud of ourselves, not braggarts, but proud of ourselves and our destiny and who we are, so that our children and our grandchildren and that little girl's grandchildren someday are going to live in a country that is new, so much in the morning, youthful, spirited. That's what we want in America. And let me conclude by just saying this to you. I need your help. If you did not like my presentation, tell no one, okay? But if you like who I am, you please tonight get on the phone and call a few of your friends and say, vote for John Kasich in the Republican primary, and if you're a Democrat, cross over and vote that way. Whatever it takes, give us the votes. It's great to be with you. Thank you, and God bless you.